On the morning of January 17, 1986, the couple Antonio Carlos Mendez, 32 years old, and Marcia Regina Oliveira, 28, left Consecu de Araguaia in southern Para for a boat trip along the majestic Araguaia River. Antonio, an agricultural engineer, worked on rural development projects in the region. Marcia, a biology teacher, had moved from Rio de Janeiro 2 years earlier to join her husband. The couple was celebrating their 5th wedding anniversary with a trip along the river they both admired, planning to sail to the Bananao Island, the largest river island in the world. In the summer of 1986, Brazil was experiencing the early years of the new republic. The Cruzado Plan had just been implemented, and there was a climate of economic hope that contrasted with the tension still present from the years of dictatorship. In the Araguaia region, which less than 15 years earlier had been the stage for the Araguaia guerrilla, life continued between the development driven by agricultural projects and the preservation of riverbank traditions. January 17th dawned with a clear sky and a temperature of 30 degrees Celsius, typical of the Amazon summer. According to witnesses, Antonio and Marcia left the small port of Consecu de Araguaia at 7:40 a.m. in a 16-foot boat with a 40 HP engine. They were carrying provisions for 5 days, fishing and photography equipment, and a journal that Marcia kept diligently. The last person to see them was Joaquin Ferreira, a 67-year-old local fisherman who helped them load their equipment. They were happy, making plans. Donna Marcia even took a picture of me helping with the stuff. Dr. Antonio told me they'd return by Wednesday, and he would bring me a big fish. Joaquin reported in his first statement to the authorities at 11:23 that same day. The couple made contact via radio with the IBDF, now IBAMA, base in Snow Felix de Araguaia, about 120 kilometers downstream, informing that they were navigating without problems and would camp for the night on Taquari Beach, a location known to local river dwellers. This was the last recorded communication from the couple. On January 22nd, when they did not return as planned, Jose Roberto Mendez, Antonio's brother, who lived in Consecu de Araguaia, notified the authorities about the disappearance. The federal police, military police, and fire department immediately launched search efforts with the support of river dwellers and indigenous people familiar with the region. Brazil in 1986 faced technological and logistical limitations that made operations difficult. The Araguaia River, with its 2,627 kilometers of length, hundreds of beaches, islands, and tributaries, presented a monumental challenge for the search teams. Additionally, the search coincided with the start of the seasonal rains, which raised the river level and further complicated the efforts. After 5 days of intense searching, on January 27th, the couple's boat was found stranded on a sandbank near the confluence of the Araguaia River with the Rio das Mortes, approximately 180 kilometers downstream. The boat was empty, with no signs of violence or structural damage. Personal belongings, including documents, money, and photographic equipment, were not found. The motor was off, and there was fuel in the tank, suggesting no mechanical failure. The boat was perfectly intact, as if it had been deliberately left there, said Delegate Humberto Mirals, who was in charge of the case. At the time, there were no signs of a struggle, blood, or any indications of an accident or violent crime. The lack of concrete evidence opened the door to various theories. Could it have been an accident during a dive? A fatal encounter with smugglers who used the river as a route? An attack by wild animals during a stop? Or were Antonio and Marcia somehow connected to a secret in the region that put them in danger? The Mendez and Oliveira families moved to Consecu de Araguaia to follow the search efforts closely. Posters with the couple's photos were distributed throughout the region. The case gained national attention, appearing on programs like Fantastico and Jornal Nacional with the headline, "The Mystery of the Araguaia. Couple disappears without a trace." With the discovery of the boat, the police investigation intensified. Delegate Humberto Murals set up an operational base in Snow Felix de Araguaia, a strategic point for coordinating the search. The case was classified as a disappearance under suspicious circumstances, and three main lines of investigation were established. The first hypothesis considered a natural accident. The Araguaia River, despite its beauty, hides dangers such as treacherous currents, whirlpools, and animals, like caimans and piranhas. According to the technical report from the Navy, produced in February 1986, the river conditions during the week of the disappearance presented moderate risks, with currents above average due to the first seasonal rains. This theory suggested that the couple may have stopped to swim and were swept away by the current. The second investigative line pointed to a crime. In the 1980s, the Araguaia region was known for land disputes, illegal gold mining, and drug trafficking. At that time, some stretches of the Araguaia were considered lawless areas, explained Delegate Murals in an interview with O Liberal in March 1986. We had information that Antonio Carlos, as an agricultural engineer, had been involved in land demarcation disputes. This theory gained traction when, on February 12, 1986, Jose Ribamar, a local fisherman, told the police that he had seen a boat similar to the couple's on the afternoon of January 17th, being approached by a larger boat with 3 men aboard near the mouth of the Crichas River. However, when he was taken for a photo lineup, Jose Ribamar was unable to definitively identify the boat, weakening his testimony. The third hypothesis, initially considered the least likely, was voluntary disappearance. This theory emerged when the police discovered that Antonio Carlos had taken out a substantial life insurance policy 6 months before the disappearance, with Marcia as the beneficiary. Additionally, documents found in the couple's apartment in Conceyu do Araguaia revealed that they had applied for new passports in December 1985. We investigated the possibility of a hoax, but the psychological profiles drawn by family members and colleagues did not support this theory, stated Delegate Murals. Both Antonio and Marcia were respected professionals, with no history of serious financial problems or erratic behavior. In March 1986, the investigation suffered a significant setback when a strong flood hit the region, drastically altering the characteristics of the area where the boat had been found. Potentially crucial evidence was lost, and the search had to be temporarily suspended. When the waters receded in April, an intriguing discovery was made. About 3 kilometers from the location where the boat had been found, local fishermen discovered a partially water-damaged camera. Forensics confirmed it was the Nikon FM2 belonging to Marcia, registered in her name. The film inside the camera was irreparably damaged by the water, but the discovery rekindled hopes that other belongings might be located. This led the police to re-examine the area more thoroughly. On May 7, 1986, during a sweep operation, a men's Topper brand sneaker was found, identified by the family as belonging to Antonio, along with loose pages of a notebook severely deteriorated by water, which appeared to be from Marcia's journal. Unfortunately, the content was illegible. The discovery of these items in scattered locations, distant from one another and from the boat, further complicated the puzzle. If it had been an accident, how could the belongings be so spread out? If it had been a crime, why would the perpetrators have left evidence behind? In June 1986, the police received a disturbing statement from Pedro Asunco, a gold miner working in the area. According to him, on the night of January 17th, he heard distant screams of a man and woman coming from the river while camping near Ilha das Garças. "I thought it was just people celebrating," maybe fishermen drinking, so I didn't pay much attention. It wasn't until I heard about the disappearance weeks later that I made the connection, he stated. Pedro's credibility was questioned when it was revealed that he had a criminal record for identity fraud and had given false testimonies in other cases. However, his precise description of the location, which matched the probable route of the couple, kept his testimony in the case files. As the months passed, the clues began to cool. In August 1986, an unexpected development occurred when the federal police received an anonymous tip claiming that the couple had been seen in Belém, preparing to leave the country. A quick operation was mounted, but it turned out to be a case of mistaken identity. The couple identified had no relation to Antonio and Ma RCI A. By the end of PCC. With limited resources and few concrete clues, the active investigation began. To slow down, Delegate Mireles was transferred to Brasilia, and the case was handed over to Delegate Augusto Ferreira, who did not share the same enthusiasm as his predecessor. However, the families did not give up. They hired a private detective, Osvaldo Junqueira, who continued investigating the case for the next 3 years. Junqueira developed a fourth theory, suggesting that the couple might have witnessed some illegal activity during their trip and been silenced because of it. The Araguaia region at that time was a route for smuggling various products, including gold and indigenous artifacts, explained Junqueira in his final report, delivered to the families in 1989. There's a possibility that Antonio and Marcia, both with cameras, may have recorded something they weren't supposed to see. This theory was never completely ruled out nor confirmed, remaining as one of many possibilities in a case that gradually faded from the headlines and the collective memory of Brazil as the years passed without significant resolutions. In the years that followed, the case of the Mendes Oliveira couple became one of Brazil's great unsolved mysteries. Periodically, special reports would revisit the disappearance, but without bringing any significant new developments. The families continued their lives, marked by absence and uncertainty, torn between the hope of a reunion and the mourning of a loss that was never confirmed. In 1994, 8 years after the disappearance, a new element emerged when Carlos Eduardo Matos, an anthropologist conducting research with indigenous communities in the Araguaia region, encountered reports about the couple during his interviews. According to these reports, collected among the Caraja people, there was an oral story about a man and a woman who knew too much about the secrets of the river and were, therefore, taken by the waters at the request of powerful people. Matos forwarded this information to the authorities and the families, but the content was considered too mythical to constitute a concrete lead. However, his academic work, Disappearances in the Araguaia, Myth and Reality, published in 1996, once again brought attention to the case. In 2001, with advances in forensic technology, the federal police officially reopened the case to reanalyze the preserved physical evidence. The camera, the sneaker, and fragments of the journal were subjected to new analysis techniques. Forensic photography experts were able to partially recover the damaged negative found in Marcia's camera. The images, severely degraded, mainly, showed landscapes of the Araguaia River and photos of the couple in happy moments during their trip. However, the last frame of the film, partially legible, showed what appeared to be a boat in the distance, photographed seemingly in secret, from an angle that suggested Marcia didn't want to be seen taking the photo. This image may indicate that the couple truly witnessed something they shouldn't have seen, stated expert Carolina Almeida. The position of the camera and the framing suggested the photo was taken covertly, not as a common tourist snapshot. The boat in the photo was identified as a type commonly used for cargo transport on the Araguaia, but no details such as names or people aboard could be distinguished. This discovery lent some credibility to Detective Junqueira's theory, but still without conclusive evidence. In 2005, nearly 2 decades after the disappearance, a bombshell statement reignited the case. Manuel Nico Silveira, a former military police officer who had been dismissed from the force for involvement with death squads, made a deathbed confession at the General Hospital of Palmas, Tocantins. According to him, the Mendez-Oliveira couple had been murdered for photographing a weapons trafficking operation on the Araguaia River. They were in the wrong place at the wrong time, Nico allegedly said, according to the record made by the hospital chaplain who heard his confession. The bodies were buried on a farm near the border of Goiás and Mato Grosso. The police investigated the confession, but Nico passed away before providing precise details about the location. Expeditions to the vaguely mentioned areas in his confession did not result in discoveries. Furthermore, Nico's credibility was questioned, as he had a history of psychiatric issues in the final years of his life. In 2012, the case took a new turn when a fisherman found clothing remnants, possibly belonging to the couple, trapped in submerged roots in the Araguaia River. However, DNA tests were inconclusive due to the degradation of the material. Between 2013 and 2023, the case remained technically open, but with few significant developments. The families continued their relentless search for answers, keeping the memory of Antonio and Marcia alive through a foundation created in their name, which funded searches for missing persons in Brazil. It was in January 2024, exactly 38 years after their disappearance, that an extraordinary event brought the case back into the spotlight. A historic flood hit the Araguaia River, the largest in 5 decades, according to the National Institute of Meteorology. The waters rose 12 meters above the normal level in some sections, flooding areas rarely reached by seasonal floods. On January 22, 2024, Jose Cardoso, a 43-year-old fisherman, was navigating near an area known as Mata Azul, about 200 kilometers from where the couple had disappeared, when he spotted something unusual floating in the water: partially burned photographs, protected inside a deteriorated plastic container that had been exposed by the force of the waters. It was strange to see those old photos floating. When I grabbed the container and saw the photos burned at the edges, but with faces still visible, I got a chill. I remembered the stories my father used to tell about the couple who disappeared in the river when I was a child, Cardoso reported. Jose handed over his discovery to the police in São Félix da Araguaia, who immediately recognized the potential importance of the find. The 17 photographs were sent to the Forensic Institute in Brasilia for analysis. The result was astonishing. These were undoubtedly photos of the Mendez-Oliveira couple, some already known to the families, others new, taken during the fateful trip of 1986. Among them were 3 particularly significant images showing a clearly illicit operation. Men were unloading boxes from a larger boat onto smaller boats at a remote point on the river. Leave a comment if you believe in never giving up on the truth. If you believe that all missing people deserve to be found, the announcement read. Discovery of the burned photographs floating in the Araguaia, 38 years after the disappearance, triggered a revolution in the case. The federal police, under the command of Delegate Rodrigo Moraes, set up a task force dedicated exclusively to analyzing the new material and revisiting all previous evidence. The Mars AT-3 1986 case, which had been relegated to the unsolved files, was given new priority. The photographs found by Jose Cardoso turned out to be key pieces of the puzzle. Digital forensic analysis, using technologies not available in previous decades, managed to recover impressive details from the partially burned images. What we have here is photographic evidence of a smuggling operation conducted on January 18, 1986, one day after the initial disappearance of the couple, explained expert Ana Luisa Montenegro at a press conference held on February 15, 2024. The images clearly show a group of 6 men unloading wooden boxes with military markings from one boat to another. Through comparative facial recognition techniques, forensics identified 3 of the 6 men in the photos. Among them was Joaquin Silveira, aka Quincas, a notorious smuggler who operated in the region during the 1980s and 1990s and had died in 2011 in a confrontation with the police. Even more surprising was the identification of Lieutenant Colonel Augusto Roca, an Army officer who in 1986 served in the region on border security operations. The third man identified was Roberto Esteves, a former federal police officer who had been dismissed from the force in 1989 for corruption. These identifications confirm the hypothesis of an illicit operation involving military personnel and corrupt agents, just as Detective Junqueira suspected in the 1980s, said Delegate Moraes. We believe that the Mendez-Oliveira couple witnessed and photographed this operation, probably without being initially detected. The geographical location where the photos were taken was also determined through the analysis of landscape, elements visible in the images, and comparison with geological maps. It was a region known as Volta Grande, a meander of the Araguaia River, located approximately 30 kilometers from where the couple's boat had been found in 1986. The dates on the photographs, confirmed through forensic analysis of the film type and development process, indicated they were taken between the afternoon of January 17th and the morning of January 18th, 1986, suggesting the couple survived at least one day after their last official contact with the IBDF base. The plastic container with the photos were found also provided valuable clues. It was a waterproof capsule, the type used by professional photographers to protect equipment and materials. Residual DNA analysis inside the capsule identified genetic material compatible with Marcia Oliveira, suggesting that she handled the photographs and deliberately stored them. Our hypothesis is that Marcia, realizing the danger they were in after witnessing the illicit operation, hid the most compromising photographs in this capsule, explained Delegate Moraes. The fact that the photos were partially burned suggests an attempt at destruction that was not completed. Based on these new findings, the federal police, in cooperation with the Federal Public Prosecutor's Office, initiated an operation in March 2024 dubbed Submerged Memory. Search and seizure warrants were executed at addresses linked to the still-living suspects, including Roberto Esteves' country house in Caldas Novas Goiás. During the search of Esteves' property, investigators found a safe buried under the floor of a warehouse at the back of the property. Inside the safe were incriminating documents, including a diary where Roberto Esteves had meticulously recorded smuggling operations conducted between 1985 and 1988. In an entry dated January 18, 1986, he wrote, "Serious problem today. A couple of tourists photographed the operation at Volta Grande. They identified the boat as the same one seen at the port 2 days earlier. TCR ordered interception. Situation resolved, but we need to change routes. Material will be sent to its destination tomorrow." This entry, although coded, provided concrete evidence of the fatal encounter between the criminal group and the Mendez-Oliveira couple. Roberto Esteves, at 72 years old, was arrested on April 5, 2024, and confronted with the evidence, decided to cooperate with the authorities in exchange for a reduced sentence. In a statement given on April 10th, Esteves revealed shocking details about what happened that January day in 1986. "We were unloading smuggled material from Bolivia, mainly weapons and gold. Lieutenant Colonel Roca was leading the operation as part of a scheme involving corrupt military personnel. Quincas spotted a boat stopped behind an island about 300 meters away. When we approached, we realized there was a couple photographing the operation. According to Esteves, Lieutenant Colonel Roca ordered the couple's capture and the seizure of the photographic material. Antonio and Marcia were taken to an isolated farm known as Retiro Novo, located about 40 kilometers from the river, where they were kept for 2 days while the group decided what to do. Roca wanted to eliminate them immediately, but we needed to make sure they hadn't communicated to anyone what they had seen. We interrogated them separately. The man, Antonio, insisted they were just tourists and didn't know what they were photographing. The woman, Marcia, was smarter. She tried to negotiate, saying she could hand over all the films in exchange for their freedom. According to Esteves, on January 20th, after intense debate among the group, Roca made the final decision. The couple would be eliminated, and their bodies would be disposed of. The execution was carried out that very night by Quincus and another accomplice known only as Baixinho, who was never identified. I didn't witness the execution. I stayed at the farmhouse. When they came back, Quincus said it was done and that the bodies had been buried in a dense forest area at the back of the property. The photographs were supposed to have all been burned, but apparently some were preserved by Marcia and hidden before her death. Based on this testimony, the federal police, with the support of the Brazilian army, conducted a search operation at the old Retiro Novo farm, now abandoned and partially covered by vegetation. After 5 days of intense searching, with the help of ground-penetrating radar, GPR, and sniffer dogs, on April 22, 2024, human remains were found in a dense forest area, approximately 800 meters from the farm's main building. Preliminary. Forensic analysis confirmed the remains to be 2 human skeletons, 1 male and 1 female, with characteristics consistent with Antonio and Marcia. Both showed skull perforations consistent with gunshot wounds. DNA testing is underway for definitive confirmation, using samples provided by the families. On April 30, 2024, the Federal Public Prosecutor's Office formally charged Roberto Esteves with qualified homicide and concealment of a corpse. Although Lieutenant Colonel Augusto Roca passed away in 2017, his name was included in the case for historical record. A third person involved, identified only as Baixinho in Esteves' testimony, is still being sought. For the Mendes and Oliveira families, the discoveries brought an end to 38 years of anguish and uncertainty. We always knew something terrible had happened, but living without concrete answers was a daily torment for almost 4 decades, said Maria Helena Mendes, Antonio's sister, in a press conference. The Araguaia couple case, as it came to be known, illustrates the complex interactions between organized crime and institutional corruption in post-dictatorship Brazil, as well as the challenges faced by the justice system in cases involving powerful figures. The discovery of the burned photographs, preserved for 38 years in the waters of the Araguaia, shows how the truth, no matter how much it is tried to be suppressed, finds ways to surface. The legacy of Antonio Carlos Mendes and Marcia Regina Oliveira continues through the foundation that bears their names, which continues to assist missing persons' families in Brazil. In June 2024, the National Congress passed the Mendes-Oliveira Law, which establishes new protocols and resources for investigating disappearances in remote areas of the country. The waters of the Araguaia, which had long kept secrets, finally allowed the truth to float to the surface, bringing justice, though late, to Antonio and Marcia. If you watched until here, it's because you care about these cases that mark families forever. Leave a comment saying, "I watched until here, so I can get to know you and see who really cares about the search for the truth." The video's message read, "Don't forget to like this video and share it so more people can learn about this incredible story of the search for justice that spanned nearly 4 decades." The Mendes-Oliveira case, officially closed in July 2024, with the confirmation of DNA tests identifying the remains found at the old Retiro Novo farm, left a profound legacy in Brazil's justice system and the country's collective memory. Roberto Esteves, the only surviving member of the criminal group identified in the photographs, was sentenced in September 2024 to 30 years in prison for double qualified homicide and concealment of a corpse. Due to his advanced age and cooperation with the investigations, he was granted the right to serve his sentence in a semi-open regime. During the trial, additional revelations came to light about the extent of the smuggling operation that operated. In the Araguaia during the 1980s, it was a sophisticated operation involving military personnel, police officers, and smugglers, taking advantage of the vastness and isolation of the region, explained prosecutor Daniela Sampaio during the trial. The smuggling included everything from weapons and ammunition to gold extracted from illegal mining operations in the Amazon. The involvement of authorities ensured the protection of the scheme and made any investigation difficult. The investigation of the case led to the reopening of other archived inquiries from the same period and region.